Good afternoon guys and welcome back to Dave's Lessons. Today we're talking irons. We are talking about how we've been working throughout this winter to improve his iron shots going into the season. Tomorrow's video is with Dave's new irons, so if you want to know what Dave's fitted himself to, or we've kind of fitted him to over the winter, that's on tomorrow at the same time. But we're going to be talking about what we've seen in Dave's iron play that has been costing him. So we're going to go to the analysis now. I'm going to talk through what we have seen, and then we're going to come back in here, do some before and afters, and you'll start to see what he's been working on, where he is at the moment, and how he still needs to continue throughout the summer. It's not something that just fixes itself over the winter.
It's taking a bit.
And it's not just irons, new irons, nice shiny irons. That's not going to exactly just help, but Dave is looking forward to those. So let's go to the analysis now. So we're now moving on to Dave's iron lesson like we've just said there. So Dave is in here doing some practice, so we're actually going to be able to get some afters here and show the drills that he's been working on and a couple of things that have been slipping into his game. So one thing we look at from down the line is, again, posture is very good. We've got those lines in there on the shaft plane and on his backside, but we've got a little bit of a gap here in between his hands and his body, so he's a little bit too far away from the ball with this mid-iron that he's using. So from there you'll see what that does into the downswing. So one thing we see is as Dave takes the club away, wants to work a little bit inside. That's one thing that we're constantly monitoring for Dave. Obviously we know now, as the winter has gone on, we're trying to get that a little bit wider and keep him a little bit more centred, and he's been working on those drills that we're going to show you today. So a good position there at the top, but we can see that he's lost his angles a little bit, and as he comes down into impact, club and arms are in good position, but he's had to move back towards the ball. So from there he's got to time that pretty good. So sometimes he can get a drop kick here. In the winter he's using a mat at Garforth, but losing the angles, and you'll see why, because it's a result of what happens from face on. So if we move onto his face on, I've just got another one that was in the studio from around about the similar time to check the ball position. So you'll see ball position looks quite far forwards there. We still have that move off the ball. And as we go through, we'll see that that left arm still wants to be working off. So because the ball position is so far forwards, Dave's arm has to come off to try and get contact with the golf ball. We can also see his hips, if anything, not the best arrow I've ever drawn, are actually moving backwards because we can see through that gap and towards the trolley. So he's having to do a lot of manipulation and trying to rescue that. He said they were both, obviously you can remember, Dave's got a great memory. They were both good strikes, but it's things that we've been working on through the winter just to tidy this up a little bit to ensure that we can get a better, more consistent strike, especially with these new irons that you will find out if you watch tomorrow's video. So let's get Dave on with his drills and show you the before and afters and show how he has improved. So you'll see there from the analysis a few different things, some very similar things. So his left arm was still working off there. We was actually losing angles more with his irons, which is surprising. A lot of people we see, you lose your angles more with a driver because you're swinging it faster.
I have to be different, Chris.
Dave likes to be different, like being a Leeds fan. But we've seen that one thing from face on is when Dave was coming down into impact, we saw, if anything, that his hips moved this way. And we saw that David then have to bring his arm off and release his hands to try and make contact. So a lot of compensations, a lot of timing. So on Dave's day, he could go out there and shoot into single figures. The next day, he could go out there and shoot closer to a 20 handicap or a 25 handicapper than his 13 handicap. 12 handicap.
12.
Gets me every time. So that is what we need to think about. We need to think about, right, how are we going to change that to stop all the manipulations? And the drills that we had on last week were two that we did include on there. Dave is going to talk you through them shortly and how he struggled and what we have done over the time. But then one big thing, especially with irons, is your weight transfer. So we've really worked on with Dave is making sure he can get a more weight transfer. And when he's been practicing, he has been using an alignment stick. But for example, when Dave has been setting up, when he's been practicing, he's been putting in an alignment stick just here on the left of his hip. And once he was doing his swings, he'd have to make sure that he gets his weight onto the alignment stick. Instead of what we see on the video is that it goes this way and his arm comes off. So there's a big gap there, so the old chicken wing. So Dave had that into his drills for irons because it's more important, obviously, with irons that we do get that weight transfer. So Dave, obviously, the drills you were doing was the club upside down.
And doing it, that feels fine because my elbow does feel to be rolling under.
Yeah.
Trying to do it with my leg behind me is a nightmare, Chris, because I'm all over the shop.
So you see Dave loses his balance a bit there. So one thing we've worked on with Dave is obviously making sure that he doesn't want to guide this arm off. So once we did that, when he was getting his foot back, because this is now staying much closer to his chest, it's much easier for him to fold and rotate. You can see sometimes with his drills, wants to go for the old cover drive if any of you play cricket. So we wanted that arm to fold a little bit better, and then it was much easier for him to get into that position. It's not a straight arm and out here, and if Dave does that in slow motion now with it upside down, you can see if he gets that left arm, the bicep connected better, you can see he can turn better. And if he then goes with the leg drop back, we can see it's much easier because he's staying, well, if we say it's a lot easier, you can see that he can stay a lot more connected. And then you can see that body rotates much better. So once Dave was doing that, we had to then put that into the golf ball. So first of all, we did that in a slower motion. So we're trying to do it not at full speed. So Dave was doing practice swings where he was coming down and feeling like that arm was very much staying connected, which is perfect. There is a total different picture than what we saw when he was on that. And then if Dave hits this one now, you'll see much better turn there. Look at his chest, he's much more through.
Yeah, because before I was kind of over there to the left. Now I feel like I'm much more down the centre of what you'd hope would be the fairway.
Yeah, and you'll see because Dave's arm's connected, he has to really get that lower body moving and rotating with the drill that we've done with an alignment stick, not always a bag. That's helped him then get the strike that we wanted to.
But that's a similar technique to what you spoke to me about at the start of the winter regarding chipping and pitching.
Yeah, exactly, and that's the thing for Dave. All Dave's game comes down to connection. It was very much the same in putting, which we'll go through in a couple of weeks, but you'll see next week in his chipping, it was one big thing that's really been holding him back.
Yeah.
But once we got that concept of the arms being connected in a couple of drills we'll show you next week, it's helped Dave get his contact, get control of his launch conditions, and that's very much the same here now with his irons. So you'll see on tomorrow's video, the irons that he's gone for actually are more lofted, but because his motion now is a lot more, trying to find the correct word without offending, is a lot more solid or a lot more consistent, we know that we can actually return the club with a little bit less loft, bring that ball flight down, but still get it going a little bit further and landing on the greens with more spin control. And that's exactly what we need for Dave to get from 12 handicap,
well remembered,
I apologise, down to the elusive 9. So we want to get him to single figures this year. We've got the clubs, or we hope we've got the right clubs for Dave in the new ones that will be arriving in the next couple of weeks. We've then also worked really hard this winter on his movements to be able to get the correct motions. So Dave's going to hit one now, and then we're going to show an analysis from face on of how that has improved from these drills. So guys, here's the before and afters. So we can see straight away we've got the ball position a little bit further back for Dave. That's now comfortable and normal. We can see the stance is actually a little bit narrower. He's certainly in a little bit more of a warmer climate than he was in Garforth back in the winter. But you'll see as we take that club away, we know that Dave had the big movement off the ball. So chest over here we see now has a little bit of a move off, but you see how there's a lot more rotation from the chest here. So we can't see the back on the left here at all, whereas we can see that we've got a big full turn here. So we've got a little bit more travel with the club, a little bit more wrist hinge. We know from there Dave can generate a little bit more speed. Then coming down into that golf ball, we'll see when I get rid of those arrows, make that move. Dave makes a big lunging move towards the ball. And we see as we come into impact, we've already got that left arm coming away from the chest. We're already trying to recover. We see here from Dave, there's less of a lunge and more rotation from the body. He hits this line nicely with the lower body now, and into impact, we can still see we've got a little bit of bend in that arm, but not much at all. So we're returning a little bit less loft from that ball position. We saw a better flight, more control on the face. So a lot of lines on there, but as we go through, still wants to come off a little bit. So we see that we're still working on that, but look at the difference there in that left arm as we come through the golf ball. And as we continue to go through, we know that Dave would get a little bit of, that's not an arrow, so that's no good to us. That would get a little bit of gap in there, but we see now Dave's transferred his weight much better. And as we come through to that position there, we can see no elbow. So Dave brings that elbow round first. Here, no sign of that elbow. We've turned through to a much stronger position than here on the left. We can see a lot better rotation. Dave's pointing over there onto the par 3. We've still got a little bit of rotation on the right hand side, but much more consistent, and much more consistent strike and flight, and that's what we are looking for. So guys, that has been Dave's iron lesson. So you've seen what we've worked on, you've saw the before and afters, what Dave is trying to achieve, and for you, you might look at that and think that's something similar to what I do, that's why I get the missed strikes. Those are a couple of drills that you can work. You see, as we've gone to the irons and we're trying to hit a little bit more down, there's a few more things we've looked at there. We've looked at weight transfer more so than we did with the driver, and that's going to be a massive effect this season for Dave on taking some divots, which is a rarity from last season. Being too shallow, he might not be too shallow this season. Getting a little bit more launch, getting some more control, getting some more spin, and being able to judge his distances a bit better. And that is going to be the difference from Dave getting from 12 down to single figures, and then really trying to continue and improve and see him do well around his own course and many other courses.
Hopefully.
So guys, hope you enjoyed that. Next week we will be looking at Dave's putting, because we was going to film it today because I'm away and Dave is away, but he's absolutely throwing it down. So we'll be looking at Dave's putting, what we did to pick Dave's putter, because that's one big thing we get asked about. How do you get fitted for a putter? What's the main things you should look at when you're trying to buy a new putter? And what we've done at Dave's setup to make him more consistent and hold some more putts. So guys, hope you're enjoying that. Comment below what more content do you want to see, and we'll see you soon.
See you soon.